All right, everybody, welcome to SuperHouse. This is Andrew, as always, and I'm once again joined by our senior Batman correspondent, Benoit.
Hey, guys.
And the song you're listening to right now is from a YouTuber called Artificial Fear. He's just one of these YouTube cover guys, and it's called Batman 89 Metalized, I think. But anyway, it is the 30th anniversary of the 1989 Batman with Michael Keaton that probably a lot of us in our age group started off with that one. And Ben has prepared quite an episode or two here.
Or many, yeah.
Yeah, or many. We'll see how this goes. So take it away, Ben, how are we starting this thing off?
Well, let's start with like memories of this, because we're from the age group, and probably the people listening to this who grew up with this on VHS.
Yeah.
Like, we weren't quite old enough to watch it in the theater, but we were old enough to like watch the VHS tape. So like, just covering nostalgia, like this was the movie that got me into Batman. I think the same thing with you, right?
Yeah, totally. And you're right. I was born in '84. It came out in '89, so I was 5, and I sort of remember it, but I don't think I saw this in the theater.
Right.
Definitely saw it like a shitload on VHS. Though.
Right.
Batman Returns is the first one I saw in the theater, but definitely wore this tape out back in the day. And Ben and I watched the VHS Diet Coke commercial.
and the Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck. You got to get a Warner Brothers ball cap.
Yeah.
You can't watch a Warner Brothers movie without a Warner Brothers ball cap.
Oh, yeah. We saw that on YouTube before we saw this on DC Universe. So
shout out to DC Universe.
Yeah, please don't die. Please stay with us.
Oh God, please! I use that more than Netflix or Hulu.
Really? Yeah. Well, yeah.
There's so much classic comics in there. I'm just like, holy shit! Like, this saves me so much.
Right.
In buying stuff, it's insane, and I'm like, I hope it doesn't go away.
I actually haven't checked out the comics a whole lot on it yet.
Really?
I've just watched Swamp Thing and I watched all their main shows.
Right.
Swamp Thing, Titans, Doom Patrol, all that shit. A little bit of Justice. Was it Young Justice Outsiders?
Young Justice Outsiders.
I haven't seen all of it yet, actually, though.
Yeah. Well, the rest of it's coming in mid-June.
Okay.
So we'll see. I appreciate that they have the older Batman movies, but it looks like those are leaving at the end of this month anyway. So I'm glad we're doing this before 89 would leave. But then again, I own a copy of the movie, so it doesn't really matter to me. But still. When I was growing up, I would take the VHS copy. We had used it so much, the cover of it, the VHS cover, those paper covers, it would worn out. We had to dump it out and put it in its own little plastic cassette thing.
Okay.
I had worn it out so much, and all I would have to do to say to my mom that I was wanting to watch the movie was just show the cassette in front of her and just shake it back and forth, and she's like, yes, you can watch the movie tonight. So I'd watch it with the Diet Coke thing in the beginning. I'd watch it all the way through, and then for some reason, to start as my tradition, after I saw the movie, after the Danny Elfman music at the end and Prince's Scandalous, which I had no idea what any of that meant, I didn't realize how sex influenced it was. Right. I would go back up to my bedroom, and I would fall asleep to an audio recording of The Untold Legend of the Batman, which is a retelling of Batman's origins. And I had and it was all covering stuff like Joe Chill and everything, but like, I didn't realize it, but I was sort of getting used to the idea that there was more than one version of Batman and not just the Tim Burton version, because it was very different, but it would cover the origin, and so I kind of imagined that it was the same story, even though it wasn't.
You did, like, back-to-back features, like, every day.
I pretty much did. I didn't realize I was doing that, but that's kind of how it was.
This is like an audio. This is like a book on tape kind of thing.
It was an audio, because it started out as a Len Wein comic. 3-part. It was mainly retelling the classic era Batman stories, the origins and everything, retelling his training and everything. It was I'll probably now that we just finished the movie, I'll probably go home and watch it or listen to it on YouTube just to complete the tradition.
Right.
That's awesome. I didn't realize the tape I had was only of part 1 though.
Okay.
And I had the full comic, so it always ended on a cliffhanger, and I just figured that was the end of the story. It was just a way into the origin story until I realized the comic.
Wait, I have to get this image completely in my head. So you had a book on tape that came with a comic that you read read the comic along with the tape?
I couldn't read at the time, though. So
I got you.
I just
but there
looked
was
at the
a
pictures.
comic.
There was a comic that was the full comic, and then there was the tape, and being maybe like 5 years old or something, I couldn't read the comic. I could just follow the pictures. Okay. And I always wondered why the tape was so short compared to the book. because the tape only covered 1/3 of the book. And it wasn't until later on that I was able to read the rest of it and be like, oh, this is the full story. That's cool. Why didn't they do the rest of the audio? And then YouTube came out, and I realized, oh, I think I only had one tape because there were other parts that were covered.
Right.
But yeah, I probably wouldn't have been able to listen to the whole thing anyway as a kid, just because I would have fallen asleep by the time it had finished.
Okay.
So that was me growing up with 89. How about you? Basically were also watching it all the time on VHS?
I think you a little more than me, but it was probably my most watched VHS.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It was, I don't know. I mean, every scene was iconic, and it was like, I think even at a young age, you might have some sort of, what do you call it? Inclination to like some dark things.
Yeah.
With Batman, it's always a thing. Like it's dark imagery, but he's a good guy. You know, so you kind of have your cake and eat it too with Batman in a lot of ways. You know, so I think I gravitated towards that pretty young, and just everything, like, you know, smoke bombs, a Batmobile. It's like the Tim Burton kind of like set pieces with, you know, very dark Joker stuff, and just everything about it is just, it was like pretty formative, you know, for me and you, I'd say. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to, you have to ask me something more specific, but yeah, pretty much everything about it, I played it over and over.
I mean, it's difficult for me because we just rewatched it, and even though I haven't seen it in years, I can still recite different lines, and I can still pick out details that I've always known. Like, I just still see the purple smear on Nicholson's neck when the Joker is revealed, or that, like, when Keaton lands in the museum, the Batman cowl is, like, off a little bit, or when he turns around, like, this utility belt, like, like, little detail stuff that's,
I
like...
don't think I noticed that.
I do, because I've seen it so many times. I'm like, yes, this part happens, and that part happens, and I'm like, oh, yeah, and, like, looking for little bits and pieces. I've listened to the sound, like... I lived and breathed this movie to the point where, like, it's hard for me to watch it and go through an emotional experience, because it's more just like reliving. It feels almost like a routine that I'm reliving instead of a movie to rewatch, because I can, like, even the music cues. I have the Danny Elfman soundtrack, I have the Prince soundtrack, and I have the La La Land release of the full soundtrack, so I know which cues were in the original soundtrack and in the new one, and I can name them off the top of my head whenever the movie comes out.
So on top of watching the movie a lot, you've revisited the soundtrack. Like,
right, so, like, I know when the cues come up, or when, like, Nicholson sits down and what instrument's going to play and things like that, because of how often I... Because, so it's like... When we rewatched it, I'm just like, I don't think I really needed to rewatch this in order to do this episode, just because, like, it's been so in my head. If I wanted to, I could maybe try to replay it in my mind. It would probably be pretty close to the actual movie because of how much it was. So that's pretty much, I'm like, no wonder I became obsessed with this character. I've watched this movie so many times that, like, I've pretty much absorbed all of it.
When do you think was the last time you saw this movie?
College, I think.
Okay, so 10 years ago?
Maybe 10 years ago, yeah. And, like, even then, I'm just watching it. I'm just like, yeah, I know that line coming, this line's coming, that music cue's coming, and everything. So I don't know if I ever need to, not like I would stop rewatching it. I probably will. I'd introduce it to my kid if I ever have kids or anything like that. But, like, it's one of those where I'm like, oh, like, I've lived and breathed so much of this movie that it's hard for me to, like, feel like it's a new experience rewatching it.
I think the last time I watched it, I think I acquired it somehow online back when I was living in Japan. It must have been around 2007, maybe 2008. So we're looking at, what, 11 years ago. God, I can't believe it's that long ago. But yeah, so it's been 11 years since I've seen the movie. And again, for the people listening, we just rewatched it together just before recording this podcast, just to get it all fresh in our minds.
One thing to bring up is I think we were discussing just the art direction, just as amazing. It's so iconic that when we were setting up for recording, we were kind of wondering. I'm just like, Nolan is sort of seen as the king of the cinematic Batman.
Yeah.
But that's mostly in story and themes more than the art direction. Because to me, Burton is still the king of the Batmobile,
right?
The Batwing, Gotham City.
Yeah.
Somewhat of the bat suit. I still love the Affleck suit being comic accurate, but also I don't know how much of that is because I've had to watch so many non-comic accurate Batman suits that anything that looked like it came from the comics at that point was good for me.
Right.
It's just so the lighting and everything, the shadows, the way it's lit. Like in Dark Knight, not to turn this into a Nolan versus Burton thing, but in Dark Knight, I always thought it was weird how in the interrogation scene, it starts with the lights off and then the lights turn on to reveal Batman. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, did we have to have him so brightly lit, sort of thing? Because I'm used to.
That's true.
Like that type of stuff. Because I'm used to this type of Batman in the shadows, and that's. Also,
I feel like that's a special case though, because
it is. I know, but I'm just saying, like even the Killing Joke interrogation room scene is like darkly lit. The one that supposedly is the influence of that. So it's things like that where I'm like, when you rewatch '89, that's what sticks out to you is like the way it's lit, the way that the Gotham looks and everything that hasn't quite ever been topped or replicated ever since, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, this is a big thing that we were always aware of it, I think, but seeing it again now. You see Burton's really good at atmosphere. Mm-hmm. That certain type of fun, macabre atmosphere. Mm-hmm. Dark but a little fun. And I think that was really perfect for this movie. And you have like the reveals are all good. Like the reveal of Batman, the reveal of the Batmobile,
yes,
the reveal of Joker's face.
Mm-hmm.
The reveal of the Batcave, that was, God, I love that scene with him driving through the woods.
That is, one of the best ones.
Growing up, we lived in Alabama before Atlanta, and we did have like a little stretch of woods.
Oh, really? Yeah.
That we would drive through to get to my house. Mm-hmm. And every time my dad, not every time, but like my dad would often, and I would also be like, we're going to the Batcave.
Yes.
Because it was a lot like that. So,
oh man, I lived in the suburbs of Orange County. We did not have any woods whatsoever to feel that way.
We totally had that. And the other thing we noticed when we were watching this was he's like, I don't think this is so much on purpose. It might have been, I don't know, but Batman kind of, in this film, doesn't move all that fast unless he's throwing a punch. Like, it's vampiric. Yeah. It's slow and methodical in a way, And I think there's something kind of creepy about it, but, of course, cool at the same time.
Yeah, that's the thing, because it's like, I know a lot of people watch it in today's age and be like, oh, like, look how slow Keaton is in the suit and everything, right. But it never... Maybe it's nostalgia on my part, and we watched it when we were kids, and we just interpreted it that way. But like, I never really saw it that way. Even now, being aware that that's what was going on, it never. Even when he does the bat turn, I'm not like, oh, he can't move his neck. I'm more like, that's how Batman moves.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think it helps with the iconography, the urban legend part of it, because the whole backstory to Keaton getting cast. The rationale behind it, because obviously it's been reported there's a huge controversy on that at the time. We weren't really around to be a part of that, but that was like the first of the Battinson type outcry. And
other than Keaton getting cast,
it was Keaton. I'm talking about Keaton getting cast. That, and so Burton was asked, like, why the hell are you thinking of Michael Keaton? Is it just because you had worked with him before on Beetlejuice and everything? And he said, well, first off, we can't go the Christopher Reeve route of Superman because we already cast Jack Nicholson as the Joker. Mm-hmm. I can't cast an unknown against Jack Nicholson. That guy's going to get destroyed. We need somebody who's already a leading actor. They're like, okay, but why him? And he said, if I have a guy who's already muscle-bound like Schwarzenegger, why the hell does he need a bat suit?
Right.
If the whole idea is this guy is a guy who needs a Batman costume in order to strike fear into the hearts of men, why then is it Arnold Schwarzenegger or any one of these muscle-bound types,
Right.
Stallone or anything like that? I need a guy who you can automatically believe that he's crazy enough to get into a bat suit and that he needs that suit in order to be effective, which is kind of the point of that shootout scene in the middle of the movie where it's during the day and he can't do anything and he's just staring kind of catonically. Like that's supposed to be the point.
Yeah,
of that
when you
scene.
watch that, it's like he's not Superman. He's not going to go into a telephone booth and change right there.
Right, yeah.
He's sort of powerless right there. He can't do fucking shit,
Mm-hmm.
and it's believable. You know, he just has to witness it, and it sucks for him. I would assume, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's when we go over like the original script, it's even more blatant about like how traumatic that is for him. In that, but I see why Keaton was the main pick, and it's interesting watching it now after having seen so many actors after him. But the way he moves in the suit, the way he talks and everything, he was the first one to come up with the whole like Batman has a different voice than Bruce Wayne. That wasn't a thing before.
And I really appreciate his take on that,
Yes.
where it's just a little deeper. Right now, especially after the Nolan ones, it's one of the major minuses of the Nolan Batman.
Mm-hmm.
For all the pluses, there's some major minuses looking back on it, and it's just there's too much attention paid to it. I feel like just I would say for Matt Reeves' Batman, do this.
Yeah,
Talk a little lower, but no fucking Batfleck, voice.
Modular thing.
No modular thing.
Mm-hmm.
No fucking screaming gruff voice from Nolan. Just,
Yeah.
dude, keep it simple, man.
Mm-hmm.
Don't overthink this.
which is why like watching this is interesting because Batman to me, like I'm watching this and like when Keaton moves and everything, I'm like that is Batman. Like it's difficult now for me to think because even like watching Affleck in this suit, I'm like yes, it's cool, but like maybe it's nostalgia on my part, but Keaton still feels like number one to me in terms of how he acted in the suit, just on a pure performance level, in terms of how he came up with that voice and the way that he decided he was going to move physically and everything. There was something to that, something special to that I don't think has quite been replicated. And yet, when he's out of the suit as Bruce Wayne, it kind of feels just more like he's Michael Keaton, as opposed to when it's Christian Bale playing Bruce Wayne, where I'm like, okay, that's Bruce Wayne. So I have this weird sort of schizophrenic feelings about like who I feel like is at the top because I love Keaton in the suit, but I love Bale when he's outside of the suit. And
You think Bale had a better Bruce Wayne?
I think Bale had a better Bruce Wayne, but I also have feelings about the same way, vice versa, where it's like I didn't really like Bale as much as I thought I should have in the suit as Batman because of the voice. And I also don't. It's not that I don't care for Keaton as Bruce Wayne. It's just that I'm so much of a purist, or I like the Bruce Wayne of the comics more. That seeing this sort of absent-minded dude with a lot of the Keaton-esque everyday mannerisms just feels a little off to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
In comparison, especially after seeing what Bale did with the role,
Right.
or what other actors have done with the role in not just movies but like cartoons and stuff. So it's like a weird feeling of I feel like Bale was probably the best as Bruce Wayne, but Keaton was the best in the suit, and so I'd love for Pattinson to combine the two.
Before we move on from the movement part of it,
Yeah.
I do want to say I like the idea, and again, maybe it's just me reading too much into it, overthinking it, but I feel like I like the idea of the fact that Batman knows so much about what's going on in the room that he doesn't really have to move super fast until he really needs to.
Yeah.
Like it's that the high intelligence part of Batman, right? Like he can
Right.
It's like Wayne Gretzky in hockey. He always knows where the puck is. You know, so I don't know. I just think that's a whole part of the whole thing for me, I guess. I don't know. I really enjoyed
It's
that.
the mastery of it. Like,
Yeah,
that's whole. I mean, it's kind of comedic, but also shows his mastery of the surroundings when he's just standing there and the guy tries to
Right.
jump on him and just falls right through, and Batman doesn't move a single muscle.
It's energy conservation as well.
He's like, I don't
Yeah.
have to, because he's not gonna make it. Like, he's already
Right.
calculated that shit,
Right.
even though he's not even looking in that direction. It's amazing.
Right.
So, those are kind of my thoughts on Keaton's Batman. Do you have any other things to add to that, or because I was gonna move into Nicholson?
Yeah, before we move on to Nicholson, growing up and even now, I think one of the things about Keaton's Bruce Wayne is it's hard to tell who he is.
Yeah.
I don't really know who Bruce Wayne is in this movie. Do you know,
Right.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
there's not a lot of
it's-
exploration too.
There's not much, but the thing is that a product of just how this movie was written, or this is kind of hard to put into words. I've thought about this a lot. Let's say you have Bruce Wayne, like in the comics or whatever, does something that shows his character, like, oh, I like green tea and playing Othello or some shit like that. That would give you a little bit something about his character.
Right.
But the thing is, that's not him punching thugs in Gotham streets. You know what I'm saying? So if you do anything that would show character like that, that would give him more definition, in the case of Batman and comic book superheroes in general, that is actually sort of a disservice to the reader in a way, because he's not doing what he should be doing. You know what I mean? So it's like these characters are always kind of pigeonholed into this one thing that they do, but then again, that's him. That's his crusade. So it's like this really extreme give and take with fleshing out a character. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think I'll get into later on the original draft of this specific version of the movie, but it was pitched as this man is insane. This guy in the bat suit is insane.
Okay.
What if he falls in love and realizes that he might be turning sane? I don't think that comes across in the movie, but it definitely comes across in the original script, and the script had a lot more Bruce Wayne scenes.
Okay.
And when I detail, I think you'll kind of see what I mean by that, where it's almost like the same general outline of scenes, but stuff starts to make more sense from a character's perspective.
Okay.
And he comes off as both a more interesting character and a little bit more like the comic book Batman at the same time. Yeah, I think my issues with the movie version is that a lot of his scenes outside of the suit involve Vicky Vale, and the relationship between him and Vicky Vale is basically her getting mad that he didn't call her after one night stand, when it feels like way more of a relationship in the original version of how things were going to progress.
There were more scenes that they were fleshed out and stuff.
There were, well, because this movie, there was a writer's strike.
Oh, in
the development,
87?
In 88, I think. And so a lot of the rewrites were done by a different writer, Warren Scarron, who is credited in this movie, along with a bunch of other guys who did it. So the original writer's vision didn't exactly get to carry over into stuff. And there was a lot of studio interference, too. There's a reason.
You don't say.
Yeah. So
yeah,
we'll get into that as we get further along. But it's not Keaton's fault. It's just when I watch it, it just kind of feels like I'm watching Michael Keaton from any other movie in this scene, and then when he's Batman, he's Batman.
There's something to be said about not knowing who Bruce Wayne is too. It's confusing, right? Because it's like, are you really not supposed to know? Because that's is it on purpose? Like he's supposed to be a mysterious Bruce Wayne type, but at the same time, or is that a fault of the filmmaker and writer not knowing who your main character is? You know what I mean?
It's kind of weird watching this and trying to put yourself in the perspective of not knowing. If you didn't know Michael Keaton was in the suit, like how this would play out. Because there's not really a big... I mean, yeah, you do see him in the Batcave, like listening into the officer and Gordon, but it's never really... There's not huge, like, big reveal moment, like, oh, he's also Batman. Like, you don't see him directly come from the party into the Batcave, taking on the suit. It's just kind of gradually revealed if you were somebody who knew nothing about this character, weren't familiar with Michael Keaton, didn't know any of the Batman mythology. It's kind of designed so that you already know that going in. Mm-hmm. And they play that irony against you. Or in your favor, whatever, for that. So it's kind of odd how they do it, but there's not... That's kind of also why it was interesting that they didn't want to do a lot of exploration of the origin and why he does what he does. It was kind of the answer to the mystery in this movie was like why he does what he does with the whole death of his parents thing.
Okay.
So that's kind of the vision of it. Also, just to add, I was telling Andrew, I thought that was the version of the Wayne murders in this one is still probably one of my favorites in terms of how haunting it is sort of played out. I think Snyder's version of Batman vs. Superman is the most quote-unquote comic accurate because it's very much like the Dark Knight Returns version brought to life, but there's still something about this one, the sound design of it, the hollow sounds and everything, the music to it, just the lighting on young Jack Napier and everything.
That, I think, is really what sells it, and how there's an effect on their voice, on his voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he does kind of seem really unhinged.
Yeah.
And murderous.
Yes.
I mean, of course, he just murdered 2 people, but man, I forgot. Actually, also, very small detail, but I forgot there was popcorn that also fell along with the pearl necklace.
Yeah.
Is that part of most of renditions?
That's unique to this version, actually. Okay. Yeah.
You've thought about this before?
I've seen enough. I've seen the Waynes die enough to know what's in what at this point. Yeah.
I thought about that as like that. Is that like a little bit of a added theatricality to, or the themes of theatricality?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. It's because I think it's because they figure like he came out of the theater type of thing.
Yeah.
And like, sure, Martha loses the pearls, but Bruce dropping the popcorn is kind of like the loss of the innocence sort of thing. In a way. So
the fun times are gone.
Yeah, exactly. That's the end of that. I love the shadow of Jack Napier sort of draping across Bruce after he's already shot the kid. I mean, shot the parents and everything. Just everything about it. It was just so well done. I always remember feeling that haunting, uneasy feeling whenever that scene would come up, but also knowing that shit was about to go down for the rest of the movie. Because after that, it's pretty much like Batman action until the end of the movie. So
yeah, I think with that scene, when I was a kid, I didn't. I think I thought it might have been a dream sequence or something. Looking back on it, but because I think somehow I knew that in most renditions of Batman, Joker is not the killer, or it's they don't know who it was. And this is before maybe Joe Chill happened or whatever. When did this sort of a side tangent? But when did Joe Chill actually become a thing in the comics?
In the 1940s. Funny enough, I have the comic right here.
Okay.
In the 1940s, Bill Finger wrote it.
Oh, okay.
It was him finding Joe Chill when he was already established as Batman, and Robin was already a thing. And he finds out that Joe Chill is still alive, still a criminal and everything, but he doesn't have any evidence against him. He just recognizes his face.
Okay.
And everything, and he ends up confronting him. If you've ever seen Chill of the Night from Brave and the Bold, that one episode, like, it's pretty much a good adaptation of that which was then also put into Untold Legend of the Batman, which is how I knew about Joe Chill growing up.
Okay.
But yeah, that's why it became a thing. That's also why Michael Uslan was very reluctant to go for that twist until he got the blessing of Bob Kane. And Bob Kane apparently told him, like, hey, if Joker was still around when we came up with the Batman origin, he probably would have been the guy to kill Batman's parents.
Right.
So Uslan was like, fine, but like, just because the comic purist in me, we won't just have Jack Napier there. We'll have 2 guys. And people can think that the other guy who grabbed the necklace was Joe Chill.
So that was Uslan's input right there.
Uslan was the one who with the idea of let's do the 2 muggers. Because again, this is the only version where there's 2 guys. And it's never really clear who the other guy is. Some people say, like, no, the other guy is a young version of Bob. Jack's number 1 guy. But, like, he doesn't really look like it. Yeah, he doesn't really look like it at all. And it's also, like, how did Bob go from, like, this suited dude in a, fedora to this, the other dude in leather jacket? Like, it doesn't work out. It doesn't really work, in my opinion. So I think it works in terms of the Joe Chill thing, as the second mugger who was helping out Jack Napier just for the sake of comic book fans.
This is the only time the Joker was Jack Napier, particularly, right?
Yeah, that was a name that Sam Hamm came up with
Okay.
for when he was developing this. So, yeah, that was the only time that it was, and the idea that Joker was going to be the killer or responsible for the death of parents was around many drafts beforehand.
Okay.
Almost even before Burton took over. It was like a recurring thing. Yeah,
It's not a bad change because, like they say in the movie, they both make each other.
right.
You know?
You also got to keep in mind this is a time where superhero franchises weren't necessarily a thing.
Right.
So, for all they knew, this was the only Batman movie to ever be made. They didn't know if there was going to be another one.
The Adam West, someday you just can't get rid of a bomb
Right.
movie. That was kind of like already long gone in people's memories.
Right.
Probably it was 30 years before.
Right, but
to this.
they still thought of Batman as Adam West. Adam West even wanted to still be Batman
For this one,
even though, and they had to tell him it's not your version. Batman's
Right.
like a 30-year-old dude. You're 50.
Right,
it's
right.
not working.
Right.
It was still such a big thing in people's minds that that's why it took Michael Uslan 10 years to get this thing off the ground, because everyone was like, yeah, sure, Richard Donner did it with Superman, but you can't do that with Batman. He's a joke. They already had a TV show about it.
Right.
They had all these shitty excuses about why they couldn't do it. So for them to twist it around, the Joker killed the parents is sure, it's kind of like 1980s revenge type of thriller, cliche, but I kind of get why they did it and killed Joker off at the end, because again, they didn't know if there was going to be another one. They hoped,
Right.
They certainly hoped that
Right.
there would be, but there was no guarantee.
Right.
So, speaking of the Joker, Jack Nicholson as the Joker was interesting to rewatch because Ledger has been in everybody's minds and everything, and now Phoenix is coming up in people's minds because of the upcoming version. That we have to, it's hard sometimes to remember oh yeah, there's other ones for you to check out, because if the internet has any influence on it, it's that Ledger was the only great version. But Nicholson is the Joker that we grew up with, apart from the Mark Hamill animated one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The main one.
Yeah. So it's interesting watching him because it's very much I'm watching this and it's Nicholson can only bring this version of Joker to life. This is, if you want Nicholson playing Joker, this is how it's done. No other guy could really do the part in this style.
Yeah, you probably know this already, but didn't Uslan see a newspaper ad for The Shining?
Mm-hmm.
And it was his face going through the door. That famous shot.
Yeah.
And God, that was 81 or something. This is pretty early on.
They always wanted him for that part.
They always did. So almost a decade in the making here, and they probably started filming in 87 or something. Probably got cast in 86.
87, 88 or so. Yeah,
Anyway, years in advance, right? So to see, I mean, it was just really perfect casting. For definitely for Burton's vision and Burton and Uslan's vision for this. Really, it was.
And there's stuff that I miss about the Joker that we haven't seen in a while, at least in live action movies. I miss the fact, watching this, I'm looking at the makeup and I'm God, yeah, I know the permanent grin sometimes looks it actually looks pretty good, but also he's having the permanent smile, which isn't really a thing in the comics, but damn, it looks good. I miss Joker just looking like the Joker from the comics. He literally looks like the Dick Sprang version of the Joker from the 50s brought to life.
Right.
Meanwhile, any other version of Joker that's been brought to screen kind of has that own director's vision or take on it. They always mess around with the design, but this one kind of just played it straight, and I miss that about it. I miss the gadgets the Joker gadgets, the Joker mobiles, his face on like everything.
Joker copter.
Yeah, he's Joker
had enough money to hire somebody to paint a helicopter and to make jackets with patches on them and shit. It's just, comic book logic. I love it.
Of course, but like I miss this version of the Joker. I mean, not to diss on Heath, because like Heath is still like still one of the greats, but also there's a certain theatricality to the Joker that wasn't in that version, simply because I'm sure Nolan felt like, oh, I know that's in the comics, it doesn't fit my world, and that's his prerogative, but like it doesn't change the fact that that's still such a big part of the character and what we're used to seeing in the comics, that to see it come to life in '89 is just really, it feels like, okay, yeah, that's the fucking Joker.
One time it was some other podcast I was listening to, they were talking about this movie a couple years ago, and they were saying that it really shows they felt like it showed that Burton was really, he's always in love with the monster, and he's like, Burton really leans in and loves the Joker,
right? And
it shows in this movie. But at the same time, Nolan did that too. I don't know if Nolan really necessarily loves the monster, but the thing is like, Joker's just such an outlandish character that generally is going to chew the scenery.
He's just going to steal the show,
steal the fucking show. So I think that's one of the next challenges, the inevitable time that Batman faces off in a live action. How can Batman ultimately, or Bruce Wayne even, not get outplayed by whoever's playing the Joker, because that will be tough.
Yeah.
That's a tall order.
A lot of it also comes down to how it's written too.
Yeah.
Because Joker tends to steal the scenery, but you can't tell me that Joker really stole much of the show in Suicide Squad, right?
No, but a lot of it was cut.
I know, but I'm just mean, just in general. So like,
that was obviously one of the worst versions, but I don't think that was Leto's fault.
No, I'm not pointing that against him. I'm just pointing out that like, he's not necessarily someone who's always going to be stealing the spotlight. It just depends on how the character is brought into it and everything. And I think the writers of Dark Knight were so into this new version of him,
right,
that I do think Bruce Wayne has fallen by the wayside in both the '89 movie and in the Dark Knight,
right,
in terms of their arcs, because they're kind of overtaken in screen time, or in emotional impact,
right,
on those guys. Let's see. Other than that, let me see. Elfman's score, still the most iconic Batman score.
Yeah.
Other than maybe the animated series, but still, like, it's. I'm guessing one of the few on the internet who doesn't mind the fact that Elfman brought back the '89 Batman theme in Justice League.
Yeah. The only thing is, like, that theme is obviously iconic, and it's probably still the best one. They're bringing it back for. This is maybe a little bit on a tangent, but like, right. it felt a little bit too pandering to me. Like, hey, we're cool. We can make you feel the member berries once again. DC's cool, everybody.
I get it, but also, like, that was a theme I never thought I would hear from the theater speakers ever again. So, for me, yes, it is fan pandering, but it was fan pandering that worked.
I want to be pandered to, baby.
I mean, hey, if you've heard our podcast review on the Justice League, it's not like the theme alone won me over on the movie. So
no.
That didn't work. But I mean, at least it was one of the highlights of at least hearing that theme.
Yeah.
Again, so
no theme has been quite as good. I mean, like we were talking about off air, the Avengers theme, I think we're both in agreement, is like kind of the best one since then. Really,
right? Yeah.
It fits their tone, and it's memorable, and you can't quite like hum it as well as Elfman's, like da-na-na-na-na, like that. My God,
it's
that in and of
genius.
itself. Yeah, Elfman's a fucking genius, man.
Especially the music in the Batmobile scene through the forest. Like, it's the Descent into Mystery is the name of the cue, and it's I was telling Andrew, I'm like, yes, I do drive around with that song sometimes when it's night, and I speed up.
It's like an enchanted forest kind of thing, you know?
Well, if I ever find myself driving through an enchanted forest, I will blast that on the speakers.
Fuck yeah, man. That shit's awesome.
Speaking of the Batmobile, I do want to debunk a common criticism. Many people that see the scene in the Batmobile chase where he uses the grappling hook to turn, and they're just like, oh, the Burton Batmobile is not as good as the Tumbler because the Burton Batmobile is so long it needs a grappling hook to turn. That's not why he uses the grappling hook. He can turn fine in all the other scenes. He only uses it because that's a sharp enough turn that any car can't make that turn.
Right.
That's why right after he makes that turn, all the other Joker mobile cars trying to go after him immediately crash because they can't do it.
Right.
So that always like pisses me off because I'm just like, no, you can't criticize the Burton Batmobile on something that's stupid. Like,
I didn't know this was a controversy.
Well, it was to me. Maybe like now it's died down because people aren't talking to it about it as much. But like, I think maybe it was at the time where the Tumbler was first released and people were just like, oh, like, this is such a better Batmobile because it can do all this stuff. I'm just like, the Burton Batmobile can work just fine. Like, in terms of destruction, yeah, it can run over shit. Did you see Batman Returns where Penguin used it to run over a bunch of try to use it to run over innocent people?
Need I remind you?
Like, when was the last time you watched these movies?
This, to me, this is the best live-action Batmobile to this day.
Yep.
I have a problem with the tank-sized Batmobiles.
Yeah, it's just not like he's. And this is what we were talking about, where that as well as the Batwing. When we're watching this Batwing, I'm just like, it looks like a fucking bat, like as it should.
Dude, obviously,
yeah.
I mean, there's no comparison.
It's
absolutely
the best
no
Batwing. Like, I'm just like, you can't. I just didn't get why Dark Knight Rises, Nolan's like, this is the bat. It's not the Batwing, it's the bat, and it doesn't look like a bat. It looks like a fucking lobster.
It's like Nolan, like, obviously he was leaning into comic book shit. I mean, it's made a comic book movie, of course, but like think about the Joker thugs in the beginning stealing the money. He's like, he said, "I killed the bus driver." Like, the way they're talking to each other is so henchman-y. You know what I mean?
It's a weird mix of like, okay, I want to keep it very like straight and gritty, but also like incorporate comic book shit at the same time. And sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't. Like,
it's like if you're gonna lean into a little bit. I mean, look, I know you want to keep that realistic tone, and you made the best Batman movies anyway. I mean, so whatever, but it's like the vehicles are just off.
Yeah.
In Nolan's.
Well, I was bringing up to Andrew. I was like, hey, like, he talks so much in Batman Begins. I want to become a symbol. This bat, the symbol is the bat. I'm going to have the like watch for my sign. Oh, I put Carmine Falcone on the spotlight to look like a bat, sort of thing.
Right.
So why is it that his tank-like vehicle just looks like all he did was just paint that thing black? He doesn't have any bat motif on it. There's nothing bat-like about the bat, even though it's called the bat. His symbol on the suit isn't even like, it blends in with the rest of the suit.
Right.
You know, like the Keaton's got the yellow oval and everything. Like, you can see it. You can see the symbol, and you know like what that's supposed to be.
Right.
And everything. You can barely see that. Like, if you're not looking for it, you don't even see the suit on the chest. What's the point of having it even there if it's not even gonna be a different color?
I think they wanted to be as tactical and realistic as possible. That was their goal.
It's true, but also, like, why does he now still have a yellow utility belt if everything, you know? It's like, they're like, well, because it's the comics. Like, there's certain stuff they took from the comics, but other stuff was just like, let's be realistic. And sometimes I felt like they pick and chose the wrong stuff. On that, but that's again, this is us being really picky about like different, like, you know, the color of the bat symbol on the chest. But like, the stuff in the end, like, it fits together. If he's talking about this being a symbol and everything like that, it makes sense for him to have that stand out, or it makes sense for his vehicles to reflect that and everything. So I love the Batmobile in the Burton one because it looks like a fucking Batmobile. Nobody can be like, oh, like, that's someone else's car.
The thing is, like, Batman's not the Hulk. Like, there's a certain amount of sleekness, ninja-like sleekness to Batman. So I feel like that should be represented in the car as well.
True.
You know, so the whole idea, like, of the Tumbler, it's like, this does not fit, man.
Right. Like, in the I mean, I know that there's that scene in Begins where all he does is kind of just turn the lights off on the freeway, and suddenly they're just like, "Where is he? We can't find him." But like, it doesn't feel like you picture the Tumbler driving around Gotham City, and you can imagine the sound being like and going all over the place. You see the Burton Batmobile just doing patrolling in Batman Returns, and you hear nothing as it goes through the streets and just slides through, and you can just picture it like passing by and nobody noticing at all.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Until he actually has to like go full throttle and he's in the middle of a chase. But like, if he's just patrolling, like that's how it should be. Nobody should know it's around or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. I like the fact that the Tumbler could like climb up buildings and shit. That was fun.
That was cool, yeah.
That was cool, but it's just the overall look of being a humongous tank-looking thing. It just didn't really. It's not my Batman.
Yeah, it's not my Batman.
It's not my Batman. So,
well, you heard it here.
I fought saying that for a second. I was like, "Fuck it, I'll say it."
Yeah, I mean, the ideal, and I think a lot of fans agree with this. The ideal is to find something where it's as like comic book atmosphere as Burton stuff in terms of the visuals, while keeping the strength of the character arcs and the themes of the Nolan stuff. If Reeves can do that balance,
good.
if Reeves can do that balance, then we're good for this upcoming one. Other than that, that's pretty much it for the movie itself. I have a whole bunch of shit about the previous versions and how it was developed and everything. But do you have any other thoughts on the movie?
Let's see. I noticed minor nuances that I didn't earlier when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know when I was a kid, I did not notice all that much the lack of makeup on the newscasters whenever they come back and they don't
have anything on.
Yeah, they don't have anything on because they're afraid to use, because they're afraid of I might have Joker products in it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I didn't notice that. I just didn't notice shit like that when I was a kid. Maybe I did, I'm just not remembering. But
I mean, there's certain things as a kid that, like, different subtlety things you just don't pick up on.
Right.
You're not expected to.
I don't think I really understood the whole like setup between Jack Napier and what's Jack Palance's character's name again?
Carl
Grissom. Yeah. That whole like the gangster like drama that would happen way in the beginning, and then they're working with the cops too, right?
Right, because Eckhart is corrupt.
Yeah. So I think that all that shit passed me the fuck by, dude. When I was younger,
I think it did for me too.
It's like, just I don't understand fucking gangster politics whenever you're fucking like 5.
Yeah,
6, 7.
It was just like, let's get that guy into the chemicals so he can become the Joker, and I can see Batman fight Joker. I didn't really know what was going on in the beginning anyway.
Yeah, I think this was the first time I kind of fully understood that whole plot line.
Yeah. Good.
Seen the movie like 1,000 times and just now getting it. Other than that, yeah, I mean, it fucking holds up, and Burton's atmosphere and the whole take pretty much works. I guess my final thoughts would be that whenever Nolan's Batman came out, especially by the time Dark Knight came out, there was a little bit of shitting on 89 Batman.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, people are, hyping up Dark Knight left and right. As well they should have. But now, looking back on it, it's like there was a lot done right with it.
Yeah.
He does blow up some thugs.
Oh, he kills.
He kills.
He flat out kills.
He flat out kills a bunch of people. But there's a lot more good than bad in this movie. The other minor thing. I remember this before. Very minor. But whenever he says, I got it in Japan, I got this armor in Japan.
Yeah.
I want kids to remember to realize, if you're like a younger millennial listening to this, only somebody like in 1989 especially, only somebody like Bruce Wayne that was a fucking millionaire was going to Japan. Like, now you can literally go to Japan for under $1,000. Like from LA it's like $600, $700, which, I feel like back in like 89 it must have been $3,000 or more
probably
to go. So
that's why it's impressive in that movie. I didn't think of that.
It's an impressive thing.
Mm-hmm.
And not just to buy the armor, but I remember, like, he went to Japan. Is this guy a fucking world traveler? Oh my god!
I was telling Andrew during watching it that I like to think that all that armor in that arsenal room are the things that he gathered during his training travels.
I think that's a good thing. Yeah, I would
because I can't imagine
you're right about
him
that,
actually
yeah.
like doing like. There's no real exploration into all that stuff, but it is definitely like one of those things that, you know, you're a comic book fan, you're already knowing the characters, you're going into this, and you
Right.
can read into those things, even if that's not really what was intended.
Right. And this is, again, reading into some shit like crazy. But it's like a bunch of armor from different cultures, and it's maybe even a way for him to study, or it's like, it's kind of like his own, I don't know, like an art gallery, but they're all warriors. They're like him, you know.
Yeah,
so
you can derive inspiration from that.
Inspiration, and he draws inspiration from shit like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it
Sam,
totally works.
Sam Hamm even said that he saw his Batman when he was writing this as kind of a samurai.
Really?
Yeah, as having his own code and everything like that. I'm not too familiar with the culture and everything, but it was interesting hearing that, because it was basically, he felt when writing this that it was all the Jack Napier stuff was classic film noir stuff. Even Vicky Vale was kind of like from His Girl Friday. The way she was originally written was kind of like a wisecracking female reporter from like His Girl Friday and everything.
Okay.
And you then just plop this samurai dude in the middle of film noir type of thing, and that was kind of what he was going for in the original script. And again, it doesn't really come across that way in the final movie, but it's an interesting idea nonetheless.
Okay.
So it definitely, like, I remember rewatching this movie after Begins, because I remember I watched Begins, I liked Begins, but also something felt off, and then I watched 89 because I'm just like, to me this was the movie to grow up with.
Yeah,
this was Batman to grow up with. I had no other live action Batman movie that really felt like it was it. Even after like Returns and Forever, I'm just like, I watched those a lot, but not as much as 89. And I was like, oh, I know what was missing, like Gotham and Batmobile and the way the suit looked and the way that he moved and like the way that Keaton talked and everything like that. And it has yet to be beaten in a way. And so, you know, watching this, it's like, okay, it's in a way, some part of it might be nostalgia, but also it's not nostalgia. Some of it is just like, that's how much they nailed it. And it's up to, you know, whoever comes next, whether it's Reeves or whoever after that, to see like, okay, what else can you add to it? What else can you like? You could beat that, or you could do a different interpretation. Well, let's see. But I think this will always be forever in my heart. Like, that is Gotham City. That is the Batmobile.
Right.
That is how Batman moves.
Yeah, he pretty much nailed all those things. Do you think that whole scene where he puts the that like dinner tray in his suit, in his tux or whatever he's wearing, and then he gets shot by the Joker.
Right.
Was his plan to get shot just as a way to get out of that conversation? Like, I don't understand exactly.
Okay, well, one of the things you gotta understand, because of the writer's strike and things like that, scenes like the apartment scene were like written on set. There's no version of There's no version of that or the the finale in the cathedral. None of that dialogue is in the actual scripts I read.
So we're gonna have to put that in our next episode.
Oh, it sounds like we will. But yeah, I guess, so to answer your question, I guess that was his plan, was to see, and also kind of like, if I were to read into this without the bias of knowing what was in the original script and everything, I would read that Bruce was already caught without the suit when those gangsters got killed by the mimes outside City Hall.
Okay.
Right? So here he is now in the apartment of his girlfriend, trying to tell her something intimate. Joker comes in. He's like, well, I don't have the suit. It's the middle of the day, but I still got to do something. And I might get killed for it, so I got to protect myself, which is why he puts the tray in, and feels that the best way to go about it is to, I guess, become more of a threat to Joker, so that Joker doesn't actually harm Vicky.
Oh, okay. So
Joker
just
shows up, but he never actually does anything to her.
Right.
He claims like, oh, like you ran off with the Batman, but then he stops being angry with her after he shoots Bruce.
Why does he go? I mean, I know it works for the plot, but like, why does he go after Vicky Vale specifically? You know, what's the actual? I mean, he says that like she's a babe in those photos or whatever, but
yeah, there's an undercurrent of him being in love with her, but it's subtle in the movie, but it was the real reason in the original script, which is that Joker admires her photography for the Corto Maltese, where she shot all the dead bodies, and so he sees that she's going to be his lasting legacy in capturing all that in the photos. So he wants her to follow him around, and he wants her to capture it so that there's a document of everything.
That's a lot. That's pretty well written, actually.
That's pretty cool, but it's like
Yeah.
it's not really in the movie.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
when I detail the original draft, you'll see and be like, okay, that's definitely, you'll see why certain decisions were made, because in the movie it's weird because watching this, the reason why I think we love the Nolan movies so much is because there's such a clear plot and arcs and everything, and this one I was just like, this is cool, but there's not really much of a story in this. It's just basically
Right.
Batman versus Joker, and that's it. And when I read the original drafts, I realized, in preparation for these episodes, oh, it wasn't originally supposed to be a very plot-heavy movie. It was supposed to be a very character-driven movie. And all the character
Interesting.
stuff that they originally had was cut. And so all you were left was like this loose plot. So
And Burton just being able to make up the slack with his atmosphere.
right, because you had Warner Brothers, who was like, we don't know what the hell we're doing because we've never made. I mean, they did do Superman, but this is a different thing. They were taking
Right.
a risk on this because everybody thought this was a jokey, campy '60s thing.
Right.
Then you had the powerhouse producers of Peter Guber and John Peters breathing down the neck. And let me tell you something: John Peters was dating Kim Basinger
Okay.
at the time.
Okay.
There was a sort of, supposedly there was some love triangle with him and Michael Keaton and Kim Basinger.
Keaton was also filling Basinger.
Yeah, apparently.
This like always happens.
This is according to Peters. Peters said that Keaton was jealous and everything, and Peters claims that Peters is one of those, like, he is fully acknowledged as the quote unquote Trump of Hollywood. So I don't know if I want to believe everything that he says about this, but
gotcha.
when it comes to Batman, he claims that he tried to rescue her from an abusive relationship and everything, and she was attached to him. But anyway, because of that, there's certain parts that Vicky Vale's in the movie where she wasn't supposed to be in the script.
Okay.
Mainly because that's the producer's girlfriend, and you're not going to leave the producer's girlfriend out of the big action sequence.
Okay.
Specifically, the ending. In the end, the original endings did not have Vicky Vale involved at all in the cathedral. It was mainly supposed to be Batman versus Joker, and that's it. So
makes more sense.
so the combination of all those producer interference, that Burton honestly didn't really have that great of a time making this movie because it didn't quite fit his original vision of it.
Yeah.
And that's why Batman Returns, Gotham looks different. There's not really a lot of acknowledgement of the first movie. It's a different feel to it because Burton wanted more control.
Burton got what he wanted.
So yeah, Batman Returns is a closer vision to what Burton would want for a Batman movie. Whereas this one's a little bit more bogged down because of the studio interference.
I think with Returns too, man, it's another tangent, but like
It's okay.
it's another case of like the villain sort of stealing the spotlight from Batman, because I
Yep.
think most people remember Catwoman
Mm-hmm.
the most from Returns.
Yeah.
More than the Penguin, honestly, I don't remember. I know I saw that movie a lot, but I don't
What
remember
about
like
Max
a whole lot.
Shrek?
Max, he was
Selena.
never put in the comics too, right?
No.
Max Shrek was never like put back into the comics.
Selena. Yeah.
That, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's like, hopefully Reeves is able to tackle that issue of Batman shouldn't be outshone by his own villains in his own movie.
Right, I agree, and I think even Nolan was able to succumb to that.
Yeah.
As much as we say that those are the best that he's done, that's also, in terms of the Batman stuff, it's also kind of fell victim to that, more so in Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, I think. Well, maybe a little bit in Dark Knight Rises, but not really in Begins. Begins is definitely Batman's movie.
Yeah, that's true. That's
but
true.
Definitely in Dark Knight.
Yeah, Scarecrow doesn't outshine him in that.
Yeah, no. So,
Yeah.
89 still holds up.
So we're gonna go over the scripts in the next
We're
episode.
going to go, yes, we are.
Okay. All right, everybody. So this has been Andrew. Catch us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/SuperHousePodcast. Thank you, Shasta, for still supporting us. I just checked again. You've been with us through all the hard times. Currently, our only tier is $1. Consider it a virtual tip box, just because we're still not quite ready for a bunch of tiers, I think, just yet. So if you want to support us, just throw us $1 on there. That'd be awesome, just like Shasta does. And we're also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And you're Ben Juan Writer?
Yeah, Ben Juan Ryder on Instagram. Prepare for a lot of pictures of either Batman or cats.
Okay, so catch us in the next one. I guess this is a two-parter, maybe three. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
And then we're going to be, or Ben is going to be regaling us with stories of what could have been, as far as the '89 Batman movie is concerned, and maybe some of the other movies as well.
Yep.
So anyway, check you later. This is Andrew signing off.
Ben signing off.